Hello, everybody. How's it going? Let me do one thing here. Welcome. Um, just been really influenced here, and I figured we'd talk instead. I was going to post a couple things, or I don't know how I was going to express it, but I just wanted to talk about a couple of things. Um, I'm just getting over a sickness, so you'll forgive me if I look a little extra disheveled than normal. There we go. Pause that idiot from speaking there. Um, didn't set myself up properly before I came in to do this here. Anyway, um, so I've spent the past, I don't know, few days at least, probably a week, doing quite a bit of reading and really digging into some really great stuff. But there's one that I read today specifically that I wanted to talk about, um, plus just a couple of other things just to show off. But I think the first thing that begs to be talked about is, again, I'm gonna bore you with this again. Um, the fact that there's some incredible stuff out there available to us on YouTube. Biggie Shack, how's it going? Um, Incredible stuff out there available to us. Cartoonist kayfabe, I'm telling you, on so many levels. It's a fantastic show. They do an incredible job. I just finished watching their weekly shoot number 11, and honestly, I mean, I'm not I'm not in comics. I enjoy comics. Hearing about the industry from that kind of industry side is incredibly fascinating to me. Um, and I think a lot of what they have to say in this episode specifically is beneficial no matter who you are, if you're working more kind of as an independent. This idea, like I myself work for a union, but it's unionized people that work in the film industry. So film technicians, and I work in the office side of it as the steward. There's a lot of times this idea that kind of goes through the arts, especially from what I found. I've had a lot of different careers through my life, everything from welding shops to kitchens to home care, all sorts of stuff. Um, I think one of the things that sticks out coming into this job and coming into this world is there's a section of people with maybe more an artistic slant to the way they think and the way they perceive and what their job is, where that whole side of negotiating for yourself and going in and making sure that you're happy with a contract and making sure that there's things that you're benefiting from it as well as your kind of short-term employer that they were talking about in this episode, is so on point for me and conversations that I have with people. Yes, in our situation, you're dealing with a union. And yes, I do understand the history of comics and they weren't dealing with a union. And there was a whole bunch of shit that took place that people got taken advantage. I'm not speaking about those specifically. I'm just thinking, especially with Ed and Jim, they seem to be, even though I think Ed is kind of, what do you say, mid 30s or something, and I believe Jim is around 40-ish. So even though they're not a brand new generation, they're a different generation of these cartoonists who have come from the independent, especially a guy like Ed, who's like, you know what? I signed a deal with Marvel. They got what they wanted out of me. I got what I wanted out of them. That's it. I'm walking away. You know what I mean? Like that kind of attitude towards stuff is really refreshing to see. And it just got me so excited about this show in general. But just kind of things along that lines about, at the end of the day, there's organizations and people that are always there to help you. But at the end of the day, you have to be your best kind of support when it comes to whatever job it is you're doing. The other thing that I find so impressive about these two, and again, it seems like they talk about a lot of people in the show. There's some names that keep coming up and they reference other people in their work ethic. So I know that there's a section of them out there for sure. And even through things like Comics Journal, you can read some of that same section voicing their opinions on things. Um, Totally lost my train of thought there. Just that this whole idea of being your best advocate and making a good business decision. And I mean, the other thing that I always end up talking to people about too, when some of the members have questions about things, we brought in someone to hold a negotiation seminar. And the thing that she said from it as well was something that I 150% agree with, is the thing with a negotiation is, if your needs aren't getting met, you have to walk away. That's what makes it a negotiation. You have your final line that you are not going to cross. And if those kind of, obviously there's degrees, you have an entire group of things. This is an entirety of what I want. In that group, there's these few things that honestly I could live without. But then you do eventually have your core needs. And if those core needs aren't met, if it's a true negotiation, you really just have to walk away. And that means possibly walking away from a job. Absolutely. But it does so many things for you beyond that, gives you that, confidence, but also gives that other party the knowledge that you are taking this very seriously. This is not, a game. Yes, it's artistic. Yes, there's all of these other bonuses to it. But at the end of the day, it's one, and they said it in this episode, it's one businessman to one businessman, and that's what it is. One businessman is just the kind of creative talent. Really, really, really fascinating episode. There was so much in there for me that had me kind of, I knew exactly what they were talking about, even though I'm not in that industry, and even though I'm definitely an outsider looking into the world of comics and creation and stuff like that. But I think it does speak on a bigger level than just a cartoonist. There's for sure that history on there in their channel. Those focuses on some artists that maybe you don't have the most knowledge about, talking about technique, their own projects. I thought it was great that their own projects seemed to line up fairly well. Excuse me, sorry. It seems like their own projects lined up pretty well, which maybe was part of the impetus for doing this, that they knew they would be finished roughly the same time. It was great to see the stacks of finished art in front of them for both of their books. And I've said it before, I'm not a fan of X-Men, but I bought the books because I really like Ed's art quite a lot. I still haven't read them. I've flipped through them. I really just don't have that much interest in the characters. I have interest in him as an artist, which is also the thing with a show like this. That ability of them, just putting this knowledge, it's fascinating for me to get a real kind of insider's look into something I'm in, like that I enjoy as a hobby anyway. Even though parts of it go over my head, for sure they do. I think there's enough in there that I can grab onto, and even when they're talking technique and the idea that they're breaking things down to such a degree that they are, is just endlessly fascinating for me. So I'm really thankful that they are in existence. Longtime fan for sure now at this point. I'm totally hooked. So without going too wild and crazy about that, because I could literally talk about that episode for a good solid hour. A couple of things that I've read. We'll start with this. So there's a guy on Instagram. I follow a lot of. I'm finding, my wife and I just had this same conversation. I'm finding that with Instagram, there's a lot of people to follow that are in kind of art kind of realms. I follow a lot of people that do like toy design and stuff like that. It's not a. I've talked about it before. It's not a slope that I'm willing to go down, especially with more of like the designer type of toys, like the, limited runs. Um, I do have a couple, but there's a lot of companies out there doing some amazing stuff. I cannot justify the prices for some of those things just to have that style of piece of art. I prefer to put my money into other art. So that said, there's a lot of people that have their own businesses and art to follow on Instagram. And one that I follow is Funeral French. And he did this art zine. Dungeon is the name it goes by, and it's "You Are Weak," and it is just art. It's not a comic, but I really really dig his style. Um, he also one sticker you can't see because it's on my computer, and then he threw in this other sticker as well to Dungeon. Let's get to a. There we go. So this was the sticker that I got from him as well. That's on the computer. Zombies, grid backgrounds, printers, severed hands, guns, cell phones. A real interesting hodgepodge and really nice use of color and just page. Really, really like it. Funeral French. Make sure you follow him if you're on the Instagram. Just a quick word about this before we get into the series that I think I might become infatuated with over the next short while here as I try to find more. I read the 5 issues of Ren and Stimpy today while lying in bed and being pathetic. And it was kind of just what I needed. Super light, pretty funny actually, and just entertaining. you know what you're getting in for. And one that I just quickly wanted to talk about was this issue. A gag kind of run full force here. So it's the special minimalist issue is this one. Stimpy invents a invisible ray gun, turns Ren invisible, and the rest of the strip is trying to find the gun to turn themselves visible again. And then we go into the next story where it's a blackout. So skip past the ads. Pages are just black with dialogue. Very entertaining issue. Really, really liked it. Yeah, just a really fun, easy read. Makes me remember the kind of stupidity that I loved with the actual show, even though John K. doesn't have anything to do with the writing of that. It's still in that same kind of vibe. And the one book, I read both volumes tonight, actually. And this one kind of blew me away. I was really surprised. At the shop that's by my office, he had a sale going on, and I stopped in to grab something and just look around, and these jumped out of the bins. He has boxes and boxes of graphic novels, and now with the sale, they were even cheaper. I go through them every once in a while. I don't remember seeing these before, but like I said, he's got quite a few boxes of them. I don't always go through all of them. This called Thorgal, Volume 4, The Archer, and Volume 5, The Land of Qua. So it's from this Cine book, the ninth. Oh my gosh, the ninth art publisher. And it's a UK. On the back here, it says they did have a cinebook.com. Doesn't exist. It's or I didn't find it anyways when I punched it in. What I did find was cinebook.co.uk, because this was an incredible read. I really, really like these a hell of a lot. What I didn't realize, I guess, when I flipped through, because I saw them there, and I just kind of flipped through to look at the art. And it's the kind of what I would consider that classic European feel to it, that I was sold as soon as I saw it, and the price was right as well. It's a surprising So what I didn't realize from just kind of taking a quick flip and just putting them into the pile, um, surprising mix of genres that I kind of didn't expect. And it's actually not a bad volume to start in on, because volume 4 starts off with a story that focuses more on Thorgel's son. And his son is coming to some realizations, and asking some questions. So as a reader, we're right in, I was anyway, I was right in with his son, about, so what does that mean? And his son is asking exactly what I'm thinking. So I thought it was a pretty fantastic uh, introduction to this series. And then it takes a little bit of a twist where they're alone on this island. I guess I don't know much of the backstory. They're alone on this island to get away from people because their son has some kind of powers, and I don't want to give too much of it away. So, but so they've kind of isolated themselves from other people, and they're very fearful of other people coming and finding where they are. So at one point in the story, he comes back and tells his mother the father went away. Um, the kid is sent out to go fish to get them some food. The kid comes, or she finds the kid, and he's got this bracelet on. And where'd you get that? A friend of mine gave it to me. He's got green hair. The mother presses him on it a little bit. Who is this person? I got to go out and find who they are. And he says that he was lying. That night he goes to the waterfall and wants to go alone, like without the dog. The mother gets suspicious and follows, and there is a boy with green hair that he has befriended. So it really sets a tone, and then it takes a real, just a very subtle horror vibe to it as you come to realizations about this green-haired child. And it's a great little twist, and I found that's what worked best with this, because in the next story, it's a pretty straight ahead. Now we go to what the father was doing basically while that time was going on, where his family, at the end of that first story, the father comes back and saves the son. So the second story, we kind of go back to just when the father left the island, and how he gets roped into this kind of fight between not kind of fight between clans, but he runs into some shady characters and enters kind of a contest of archery skills. There's a couple looks at those pages. So it's more a traditional kind of adventure, not quite Robin Hoodish, but that sort of like adventure story. And then you jump into the second, or for me, the second book, what is actually the fifth in the series, and you start getting, there's touches of sci-fi in this first one too, as you learn some things. In the next book, you get some touches of magic, and it's almost like a fairy tale in some ways. But it's not, no one genre overpowers the other. I find they really, really work nicely together. The art is fantastic to look at, which then leads me to the last part of talking about this book. So it was published in English, published in multiple languages. The English versions, when they were published, apparently, from the little bit of reading that I did, there was a couple of things that bother me, but such is life the way it is. One of them is that they printed them out of order from the original Belgian comics, and then they edited some of the books because there was some nudity in it. And you can see touches of it in the first or the second book. I can't remember which one it was. Anyway, in this volume 4, one of the stories in here, you can see where they've edited a naked woman, so you don't see her nipples. Whatever, and I read a little bit of an interview, and they said, well, the thing is, if we didn't do it, we wouldn't be able to distribute our books in the US and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So I do appreciate that side of it. It is still a shame to see anything edited by someone else. They claim that they did it with the artists and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know. But the thing with this stuff is it's just not easy to find. We have some shops around here, don't get me wrong, that have some fantastic stuff. Absolutely, they do. But when I was looking on Cinebook's website, it's just I'm drooling looking at all this stuff, right? So they have a link where it stores because I was going to order from them online, but it would have cost me, I think, to get 3 books after shipping and taxes and stuff. It would have cost me about 25 bucks Canadian per book. Um, I'd rather try to do some digging locally and in Canada. So it led me to a link on their website where it has stores. And in Canada, of course, the Beguiling in Toronto carries some Cinebook stuff. So I've reached out to them to see if they have any volumes so I can buy them a little bit more affordable. I just wish there was a better system, and I guess I should take that back because again, going to something else they said in Cartoonist Kayfabe, Jim Rugg was saying is like beyond publishing everything, you have to know that you have fans of your work, and I think that's just the way that it is for where I am in the country. If I was on one of the coasts, it would be different, but it's not economically feasible all the time to get stuff to us here. It does cost a bit. We're not talking New Zealand shipping their Spiro, but it does cost us a little bit. Um, and then the audience just isn't necessarily there for it in our city. It's not that they don't exist. There's not a big number of us to buy this kind of stuff to keep these shops kind of wanting to bring it in all the time. I mean, I applaud some of our local shops that do try to do this. That's why I always, when I go to conventions, all of those places, it's always, where's that box of books that nobody else is interested in? That's the one I want to start looking through. I do appreciate and I do try to support as often as I can. Obviously, I don't have never-ending pockets, but I would highly recommend people to dig out this book if you can find it and give it a shot. Really, really entertaining read, and I can't wait to see what happens because book 5 left it a bit of a cliffhanger. So I need to know what happens. That's about it. There's other stuff coming. I've been reading a bunch of Eclipse titles, and I've started setting them to the side because I want to discuss them. I read the 2 Detectives Inc. miniseries. One is a 2-issue, and then one is a 3-issue series. So I've read all those. I read a bunch of Laser Eraser and Press Button, and then I have some more stuff upstairs. So look out for some Eclipse Comics videos. I'm going to try to do a series now that I've got a big chunk of them and I'm starting to dig in. Now that I have like full sets, that is, I'm starting to dig into the stuff that I've got full runs, especially if they're mini series. One that I'm really looking forward to reading, I read the first issue, Aztec Ace. I'm looking forward to reading that series. The art in there is pretty incredible, albeit dense. It's pretty dense read so far, just because the pages are extremely dense, which is a little bit of a deterrent in this first issue, but I'm going to push through and see how it goes. I checked for dust encrusted European albums, never see them. Yeah, no 64-page special. It's the same. When I did find the stuff, it was upstairs. That's open once a month at Red River Books, tucked into a corner on a shelf, down out of everybody's sight, but you just don't find them. Although if I had a place, I know that you're not really, really close, but if I had a place like Beguiling, I would love to. I've never been in it, even my visits. And when we lived in Ontario, I don't think I ever went into the Beguiling. At that time, I wasn't as heavy comics as I am now. I was more records and stuff like that. And Suspect Video and Rotate This and all that in Toronto is where we went to all the time. I wish, because I would love to see that shop. So anyway, now that I get all this stuff, I wanted to start going through it, and I'd love to do a series of videos where we just look at the Eclipse titles in general. They're not all hits. Trust me, they're not all hits, but they're not all total misses either. There's still some really good stuff happening, even in these series. Even if I didn't like the stories as much, there's some pretty outrageous, interesting art out there, or very unique anyway. So yeah, stick around at some point and we'll get to that. And this whole Cartoonist Kayfabe thing does have me remembering about the Comics Journal stuff I was going to talk about when they tried to unionize, or that idea. I would love to dig into that more. I'm picking up some more journal this weekend. Actually, found some locals that have some for me, so I'm gonna go and pick those up to add to the collection and really put some time in Eclipse and Comics Journal and really dive in deep. Anyway, thanks a lot. That was it. 64-page special. I'm waiting for a live stream. You better have one. That idea is exciting. We'll talk to you soon, everybody. Take it easy.